I think that's all I have as far as technical questions. So I'm going to change the presenter controls over to Rebecca. And hi, Rebecca. Are you here today?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Great. All right, let's get started here.
I can see your screen. It looks good.
Excellent. Okay, we're good to go. Awesome. Thanks so much, Louise.
Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome to our webinar today, Book Review Basics, Using Reviews and Annotations for Reader's Advisory. As Louise said, I'm Rebecca Vanuk, and I'm the Collection Management and Library Outreach Editor for Booklist magazine. This webinar is part of the Reader's Advisory Conversation series, which is generously sponsored by Novelist, Booklist, and Rails. And I encourage you to find out more about these events by visiting booklistonline.com/live events. We've got a number of ones that we've done so far. We hope to do a few more in the spring. And basically, it's just a way for us to do some Reader's Advisory-based webinars. Rails has a wonderful setup that they let us use for their tech stuff. And Novelist is very interested in getting the word out, and they help us sponsor this, and we're really proud of this program. So please go to that site and check out some of the other ones that we've done. Now, we're going to split this session today into two parts. The first part will be tips for writing your own reviews and annotations, and then the second part will be using reviews and annotations in Reader's Advisory work. Now, for those of you who are attending live this afternoon, I did leave some space in the middle for us to stop so I can answer some questions if you've got any as we go along. And we'll also have time at the end. And please feel free to utilize that chat box for questions. And let's dive right in. So when you're thinking about writing about books, the first thing to have in mind is what outlet you're writing for. Are you looking at writing for your library newsletter, for your library's website or blog? Are you looking to do more in-library signage, handouts, things like bookmarks and shelf talkers and printed materials like that? Are you looking to review for a publication, a journal like Booklist? Or are you looking to write for your personal blog? Each of these outlets takes a different style of writing, along with a different length for sure, but the outcome is the same. You're writing to inform someone about a book. And so we're going to get to all of those different venues in this webinar. We'll do that in a little bit. But I thought I'd start out the program with some basic writing tips. And I wanted to let you know, during this, when I talk about this, I usually am interchanging the term review and annotation, even though they are definitely different, separate things, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But if I say reviews, don't think that I'm just talking about something like reviewing for Booklist. I'm also talking about those things that you do for your passive Reader's Advisory or the things that you're writing for your library website or blog. So review, annotation, I kind of mean the same thing when I'm talking about that. So when you're writing about books, you want to keep the basic appeal language of Reader's Advisory in your mind as you write. After all, you've got a short amount of time and a very short amount of space to grab a reader and get them interested in the book that you're talking about. Appeal factors to keep in mind include tone, pace, style, characters, and storyline. A good annotation or review will hit as many of these points as possible within your word limit. So let's take a closer look at some of these factors. Many of you are probably familiar with this if you've done any kind of Reader's Advisory training. A lot of what we talk about in trainings in general are those appeal factors. But I think that sometimes we tend to think about that in terms of how we can talk to a patron about books when we're talking to them. I encourage you to think about writing about books in the same way that you would if you were talking to a patron that was right in front of you asking you about a book. So keep those appeal factors in mind, and we're going to take a look at them. So for example, let's see here. What are the different appeal factors? Looking at storyline, consider what might interest a reader about the storyline. Is it action-packed, issue-oriented, realistic, character-driven? How about the pace? Fast and thrilling, leisurely or languid? Does it start off slow but build in intensity? Does the pace match the storyline? Tone, lots of buzzwords for tone. Is the book moving? Is it humorous, irreverent, romantic, thrilling, exciting, foreboding? What's the writing style like? Is it lyrical? Is it realistic or journalistic? Maybe it's clipped. Is it heavy on dialogue? These are all things that you can use within a review or annotation to really let a reader know what they're looking at. And then the characters. Are they authentic? Are they unreliable? Are they unlikable? How about larger than life or quirky? You all know these buzzwords when we're talking about characters, and that's exactly the kind of thing that your eyes should go to when you're reading a review, and it's the sort of thing you should keep in the back of your head when you're writing a review. Get those sort of buzzwords out there talking about stuff, appeal factors that everybody knows about. Now, reading something in anticipation of writing about it is a bit more involved than reading something for your own fun, right? It's work, look at it that way. There are things that you can be thinking about as you go along in any book. What's the general field if it's nonfiction, or genre if it's fiction? Does the book fit into that? What's the author's style? Is it formal? Is it casual? If you're talking about a nonfiction book in particular, are the ideas well developed? What areas are covered and what's been left out? How accurate or current is the information? And with fiction, what kind of reader would like this book? What appeal factors come into play? I would also say what books that you are already familiar with are close to this kind of book that you can offer as a read-alike. These are all just really basic questions that you should have in the back of your head if you're reading something with the idea of writing about it later. Have that kind of circling through the whole time you're reading. To get a little heavier into that list, this is an excellent list of things that you can be thinking about when preparing to review or write about a book. Now, this list comes from the Maine State Library, and the URL is up there at the top right of the screen. And don't worry about taking notes on these because you can visit that page and they're all there. What I appreciate about this list, and the fiction one that we're going to look at next, is that they've really heavily distilled down some of the important things that you should think about when preparing to write a book review. Now note, of course, you'll be able to cover more of these points in an actual full book review than you would in something like an annotation or a brief shelf talker or something like that. But I still think it's important to have some of these considerations in mind, even if you're just coming up with a 2- or 4-line annotation for a shelf talker. It's never a bad idea to be well prepared to write that. So looking at some of these nonfiction tips here. Scope. What does this book cover? Question the accuracy of the text and the illustrations. Keep an eye towards the currency of the information or any possible bias of that author. Speaking of the author, think about their authority. Are they qualified to write about this topic? Note any controversial elements that might prove problematic. The emphasis should be to inform, not to judge. So these are some good nonfiction tips. I won't read them all off for you. You can all read. And like I said, the URL is up there at the top if you want to go look at the full page of those tips. We'll move right along here to their fiction tips. Again, you can cover more of these areas in a full book review than you could in a simple annotation, but I just think they are really, really useful things to have in mind when you set out to write. How convincing and accurate is the time and place? Are the characters realistic? Do readers see them grow and develop within the story? Is the writing original, or is it written to a formula? Is the dialogue in balance with narration? And so forth. Now, as I mentioned before, for the most part in this session, I tend to use the word review. But there is a real difference between a review and an annotation, and it's not just the length. A review by nature is meant as a judgment of the book, where an annotation is just a summary and a description. I'm going to take a look at this particular book in both ways so that you can see some of the differences and similarities. Here we have the novelist annotation for The Martian and the book list review for The Martian. Now, of course, you can look at it and see right away, oh, it's a review because it's longer. Well, it's not quite as basic as that. We're going to go through a little bit step by step here to show you the main differences between reviews and annotations. So here, in the novelist annotation, we have 2 lines of plot description, followed by a quick notation of who the book might appeal to, and a nod towards the appeal of the character. Now, this is a perfect example of a good annotation because it is succinct, it gets the point across, and it leads the right reader to this book. This is something that you could look up. Let's say you haven't read The Martian before, you don't know anything about this, maybe you're not a science fiction person. You can look at this really briefly, get a nice snapshot idea of what this book is about, and maybe even who would really like it. Tells you right there, fans of hard science fiction and survival stories. It also tells you it's a debut novel, so that's another one of those buzzwords, I guess, for lack of a better term. It's just another one of those key things that sort of clues you in to what's going on in this book. Now, looking at the book list review, we see that there's the opportunity for longer plot description. In fact, the plot description is spread out in more than one point throughout the review. There's appeal buzzword here. The book is gripping, is what the buzzword there is, gripping. And there's not one, but 2 comparisons to something else. It's comparing it to another novel and comparing it to a movie. So see, when you've got room, you can add those things in. The wrap-up of the review spends more time on the appeal of the book than a basic annotation is able to. So reading this review, you can get a good sense of the book, and you can use that in your reader's advisory work, which is something we're going to talk about more in the second part of this session. But I did want to give you a chance to read this review and kind of think about how the different things that I've got pointed out in those blue circles there are the sort of things that lead you into reader's advisory. You don't have to read this book. You can just read a review of it in order to know that this is a gripping novel. You can find out what the plot is, that you could pair it back to someone, and you've got some comparisons here. So that's sort of a general way of looking at the difference between a review and an annotation. So now that we've got some of those basics covered, let's look at the variety of venues that you may be writing for. We'll start off with writing for your library newsletter, website, bookmarks, or shelf talkers. Now, for the most part, these annotations stay short. Keep the plot descriptions simple, hit major appeal points, and keep it to 100 words or less. You can go longer when you're writing for your website or blog because you're not limited to print space. Makes sense, right? But still, it's best to think in terms of getting to the point. Aiming for 100 or 150, no more than 200 words usually works, and you can add more plot description. Also, here is where you have the chance to let some personality shine. After all, when you're working with your patrons in the library, they come to you for personal recommendations. Why not let them come to your website to do the same? Talk about why you, as a reader, enjoyed this book. I'm going to show you an example of writing for a blog in just a moment. And in this case, the one that I'm going to show you is a lot longer than 200 words, but I'll show you how it works. In any case, the main thing to realize is when you're talking about doing annotations and writing for library purposes, the briefer the better. You have a very limited amount of time. It's kind of like when someone comes up to you at the desk, right? No one ever has a full hour that they can just sit and talk to you about books. Right? We would love it if that was our job, and it's not. People are in a rush. They come in and they want to chat, but they want to, they want to leave with a book quickly. They want you to tell them off the top of your head, boom, 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 what's a good book? It's the same sort of thing when they're looking at your library passive reader's advisory. They want to grab a bookmark. They want to grab a handout. They want to look at that shelf talker. They want to look at the poster that you've got. And so if you can keep your annotations short and simple, you're going to grab them better than you would if you're going to make them read something long. Let's take a look at this here for just a quick second. I've got some examples here on the screen from Novelist showing you how you can take annotations for the same book and use it in a variety of ways, both print and online. And the point here is once you've created content, you should feel free to spread it widely. You can see there that they've got an example. They're looking at the book, Their Travels with Casey, and they're showing how you can use that in a printed poster, on a staff pick section of your website or newsletter. Very easy to take a small blurb and just pop it right into the different print and web venues that your library uses for passive readers advisory. So on to talking a bit more about writing online. So here I'm talking mostly about writing for your library's blog, but maybe you've got a personal website. That's great too. We're going to talk about that in just a second. How else can you get started writing online? What if you don't want to do a personal blog? What if your library doesn't have a blog yet, or you're a little bit nervous about that being the first thing that you write for? I always encourage people to think about getting their feet wet by writing online, doing reviews for Amazon, for Goodreads, or for the Library Reads program. And I'll tell you more about the Library Reads program a little bit later. These ways of writing can be a great way to get started with no judgment until you become more comfortable with writing about books. I also encourage people to take cues from existing blogs. There's lots of blogs out there, libraries, personal, etc. The more that you read those, the more comfortable you'll get with seeing how different people's writing styles are. And you'll see what is appealing. Maybe you're someone who likes those really, really long book expositions. Maybe you're looking for examples of doing short ones. I've got some examples coming up on how to find that sort of thing. So thinking a little bit more about starting a blog, I want to encourage people to view the recording of one of our previous RA Conversation sessions, which was called Book Blogging 101. Karen and I did this at Rails. So this is Karen Keefe and I, my colleague. In this session, which you can view on YouTube, Karen and I cover the benefits of starting a personal or library-related book blog, including the various platforms you can choose from, how to get started, what to talk about, how to stay motivated, how to publicize a blog, and more. You can view this presentation at the URL there on the screen, and I'll leave that up for just a moment so that you can jot that down if you'd like to. This is a YouTube video, and there's my smiling little face there. I didn't pick that on purpose. But there's where you can find a little bit more about book blogging. All right, so moving on. Now, this is the example that I was talking about earlier. Now, some of you, hopefully most of you, are already familiar with librarian Becky Spratford and her blog, RA for All, which is at raforall.blogspot.com. And I wanted to talk about how she talks about specific titles on her blog. And we're going to keep with The Martian just because it was an easy book to choose. I'd like to take a look at how a blog post allows much more freedom to take as long as you want to talk about a book. So here, continues here, and there was even a third screen that I could have done on this. It's a very, very long blog post about this book. Now, what Becky is really clever with, though, is she takes that long synopsis and breaks it up into paragraphs that you can easily get information from. So, for example, on the left, you can see Becky's soundbite synopsis of the book, where she gives a brief annotation. She's even timed it, said it took her 21 seconds to talk about this. I think that's really clever. Instead of looking at something by word count, she looks at it by how long it takes to talk about. So this is that soundbite that you can memorize and say to a patron when they're asking you about a book. So she's got her soundbite synopsis. And right underneath that, so she goes on to tell us why she talked about it the way that she did. For this particular title, she wanted to convey the fact that the book is smart and fun to read. Now later in the post, you can see over to the right-hand side, later in the post, she goes on to give her reader's advisory advice, including possible limiters in the book, here noting that there's some strong language. She offers 3 words that describe this book, which is perfect for RA purposes, and she includes a list of read-alikes and why she makes those read-alike recommendations. So I always like to showcase Becky's blog, especially these posts when she's reviewing books, because this is a perfect example of how you can use a website or a blog post to talk about a book as long as you would like to. There is no There's no print limit to being online. And I think the danger there sometimes is to ramble on about something, and Becky does this perfect job of not rambling. She really gets right to the point on things. She has these different sections of the post in bold, so you can go right to that soundbite synopsis, right to possible limiters, right to those important 3 words, right to the read-alike slice. So it's a perfect way of setting up a nice longer blog post about a book. Always like to show that off. Now, switching gears a little bit, don't be afraid to use your blog just for quick posts on things. So this, of course, is another book blog that you should be sure to take a look at. It's the Booklist Reader blog, and yes, this is shameless self-promotion time. But here at the Booklist Reader, Booklist editors and freelancers write about everything from adult books to youthlit, print and ebooks, audio and video, editors' rants, author Q&As, book trailers, lists, news, and much more. We are a good example of kind of one of those all-encompassing book blogs. It's just everything books, you'll find it here on the Booklist Reader. And so what I wanted to showcase about that, keeping in theme with this Martian again, book with the Martian, here's a post that Karen Keefe did for us showing, hey, a blog post can be brief and simple. This is just a short list of books that you could recommend to readers who like the Martian. So you can see that is it. That in comparison to Becky's post, which was 3 screens long, this post is 1 screen long and not even a full screen. But Karen's just got 1 paragraph about, hey, here's a little bit about this book, and then boom, here's 5 titles that we're going to send you to that you could use as read-alikes. So I thought this was an interesting way to kind of compare and contrast different ways that you can think about doing your blog posts when you're talking about blogging for books. Now, how about reviewing for library publications? So actual book reviews, not just annotations. On this screen here, I'm showing you a brief list of the major library review publications and how to go about becoming a reviewer for them. Some are paid, most are unpaid, and they all have a different style and set of expectations. Now, I'm going to leave this slide up for a moment so that you can jot down everything or anything of interest. But while I do that, I wanted to talk a little bit specifically about the Library Reads program. It's there at the bottom. Hopefully, many of you are familiar with Library Reads, and it's not a review publication, but I just wanted to make sure I took the time to spotlight them, and I kind of thought this would be a good slide to stop on for a moment so you can look at those URLs while you listen to me talk about how wonderful Library Reads is. So Library Reads is a program where library staff get the chance to read advanced copies of books and nominate them for a monthly top 10 list. You can find out all the information on the program by visiting libraryreads.org, but the way that this relates to writing and using annotations is that this can be a really great way to get your feet wet writing about what you liked about a book. The reviews that you submit to Library Reads are meant specifically to be conversational and informal, and they're meant to be very brief. The site has full information on how to submit those nominations and what they're looking for. And right here, I'll show you an example of one of their nomination annotations. All right, so some nuts and bolts about reviewing for publication. Before I get into this, I realized I also wanted to say something about writing not for publication. Now, I think it's probably pretty obvious to most of you that if you become a professional reviewer for any of the journals, you will be assigned an editor, and they take care of copy editing and fixing any errors and style things in your review. When you are reviewing for yourself, for your library, it is paramount that you get someone else on your staff to take a look at what you're writing before you publish it anywhere. No matter how well you can write, no matter how much experience you have, a second set of eyes is always going to be necessary. So if you are writing for your library's blog and you don't have someone who is considered like, in control of the blog or editor, make sure you've got a colleague that you can send something to say, hey, can you give this a once over? Make sure I don't have any grammatical errors in here. Make sure that this makes sense. Just get a fresh pair of eyes. I can't overemphasize that enough, that before you hit that publish button or before you make your printout, you want to go ahead and have someone else take a look at it. Now, when you're talking about reviewing for a review publication, the main considerations to have include what is the style of the publication. A book review is not a book review is not a book review across the board. Every publication has their own style, the specified lengths that they like for their reviews, and their expectations. If you're considering reviewing professionally, grab a few of the most current issues of that particular publication and read through a variety of reviews, and you'll quickly get a feel for what their style is. I also want to put in a word of advice for learning how to write in a specific style. Always check if you apply to do this, and if you're doing professional reviewing, always check the finished published review against what you've submitted. This is by far the best way to see the common errors that you might be making. So even though I am now a full-time editor at Booklist, I've been here for several years now, I still am in this habit from back when I used to be a freelance reviewer for Voya and for LJ. The second that my reviews hit print, every review that I submitted, I saved a file, and then the second it was ready for print, I grabbed it, copied and pasted it into that file, and I literally went through word by word to see what they changed. I think it's a good habit to be in. All of the people who review for me, I tell them at the beginning that that's what they should be doing, because it's just a great way to see, what mistakes am I making over and over again? What kind of mistake am I making that might not really be a mistake, but it's a style choice that journal goes with. And that's the best way to kind of see how your writing is going and what you do. So I can't tell you enough that that's the best way to learn from your editor for reviewing. So that is it for part one, the writing part. So let's pause for some questions. Now, I haven't really been able to follow along too much here in the chat box, but let me take a look and see.
Hi Becky, it's Louise. Were you able to see the questions?
I'm looking at some of them right now. Let me take a look here. Let's see. Someone was asking what was the long blog name. I'm going to assume that might have been Becky's blog, which is raforall.blogspot.com.
Yeah, and I typed that into the chat box.
Oh, good.
If people want to link to that.
Excellent. Great. I was going to say the other blog that I've mentioned was the Booklist Reader, which is booklistreader.com.
Okay.
Were there any other questions that anyone's got so far, or should I just go right on into part two?
There was one other question, and the question was asking if anyone posts comments about their holdings on worldcat.org. And that came pretty early. I assume it just maybe putting their holdings into their blog post, I'm assuming. What do you think about that?
Got it. Okay, yeah. So if there's anyone else listening now who wants to respond if they do it, I have not done that myself, but that certainly is another thing, another way that you can add annotations online.
Okay.
But okay, if there's no further questions, we can go right on in to part two. So, part two. What if I don't want to write my own reviews and annotations? That's okay. You can use reviews and annotations in Reader's Advisory in general. So, now that you know how to write about books, what should you be looking for when you read reviews? Quick and easy bullet points to think about. Look for those appeal characteristics and buzzwords that we talked about at the beginning, and I've got them really tiny little over there on the right, but those are the kind of things that should jump out at you when you're reading reviews. And they're the kinds of things that if you've had enough of your reader's advisory training, those are the things that you'll recognize right away and can kind of stick into your brain to think about, oh, okay, when I'm telling somebody about The Martian, I think they're going to like it because of characters. So I'm going to give that to someone who likes to read character-driven stuff. All right, I'll remember that. So kind of sort of have that in the back of your head. All those appeal terms, they should pop out at you when you're reading reviews. Look for audience, too, when you're reading reviews and annotations. The really, really good reviews will give you a hint towards what that audience is going to be. You know, this is for your chick lit fans that like things that are fast-paced and funny. This is for people who are looking for gentle romance. This is for readers who like a thrill ride. You can always sort of look for that. What sort of audience is that? And keep in mind the patrons that you have when you're reading those reviews. You know, you can always think to yourself, oh, so-and-so would love this book. That's exactly what he looks for when he's looking for fiction. So look for audience cues in reviews. And note what other authors and titles are mentioned, and go down that rabbit hole looking at reviews for those titles. Not every review has the chance to do that. Sometimes the reviewer just doesn't know a variety of authors or styles that might fit this book. Sometimes the reviewer has hit the word limit and they can't put that in. But anytime a reviewer takes the time to note, you know, this would be perfect for fans of XYZ, or readers who like this author will be sure to like this debut novelist. Always make a note of that, and if you can, go find reviews of the other books as well. It kind of helps you out in that way. So one of the things that I like to talk about whenever I talk about Reader's Advisory is looking at Reader's Advisory as a way to fill your brain full of books. I wrote an article for Public Libraries Magazine on the topic called Jack of All Trades Reader's Advisory, How to Learn a Little About a Lot, and you can check it out. It is available online for free at that URL that's on the screen. Now, some of the links in that, I think this is, 2010, some of the links in that are probably outdated at this point, taking you to different websites and things, but the gist of it is still the same. It's my take on Reader's Advisory. Most of the time, patrons expect that you are completely knowledgeable about every single book that's on the library shelf, because that's your job, after all, isn't it? You get to sit around and read all those books all day long. It never ceases to amuse me when someone thinks, you know, oh, well, you know, Rebecca works in the fiction department. She's the Reader's Advisory librarian. Of course, she's personally read and selected, hand-selected every single one of those books. And whether they really think that or not, I'm being a little snarky here, but you know, that is, whether they actually think that, it is sort of the expectation, though, that you're the librarian. You know these things. They should be able to walk up to you and just say, you know, X, this is the title of the book that I like. This is an author that I like. What do you know off the top of your head that's just like it? So I've always considered our biggest challenge in Reader's Advisory is knowing a lot, or knowing a little about a lot, knowing a little bit about every book, knowing a little bit about all of the genres, knowing a little bit about different authors, whether or not you actually have the time or the interest to read them. My way of thinking is that really you just have to fill your brain full of books in order to be able to make those comparisons and recommendations for patrons. So one of the easiest ways of doing this is reading book reviews and getting information from RA resources such as Booklist and Novelist. Now, Booklist, for example, we have a wealth of Reader's Advisory content available on our website, which is booklistonline.com. I'm just going to briefly mention two of the easiest ways to get familiar with books that you might not have time or interest to read. We have core collections features, and we have top 10 lists. Now, if you're a Booklist subscriber, you have full and free access to all of these features, both in web form and via our new digital edition. If you're not a subscriber, you can still access our top 10 lists online and a selection of some of the more recent core collections lists. And you can see here on the left side, I've got some of our recent core collections. What we do with core collections is we take anywhere from 10 to 15 books that we feel have, you know, they were very well reviewed in Booklist, and we feel kind of set you up for a really good core collection in those areas. So for example, The February 1 issue is our multicultural issue, and my colleague Donna Seaman has created a core collection of multicultural American family histories. We do everything from nonfiction, all the areas of nonfiction and fiction genres as well in our core collections. I have one coming up. You can see at the bottom there, there's a core collection for ensemble women's fiction. The March issue, one of the March issues, is always our women's fiction issue. And so last year I did a core collection of different ensemble women's fiction books. This year, sneak preview, we'll be doing a core collection of books that feature sisters, women's fiction doing sisters. So it's just this nice kind of way that you can look at these lists, and all you have to do is go to booklistonline.com and type the words core collection in the search box. It's a really nice way for you to think, hey, I don't read women's fiction at all. What are some of the, give me a dozen or so books that I should know that feature a lot of characters. Boom, there you go, core collection ensemble women's fiction. Or boom, core collection small town romance. I mean, it's a great way for you to read those, and they're all annotated. Read those annotations without having to really be familiar with those books themselves. Just a great way to kind of lead you into some filling your brain with books, right? So on the right, we have one of our top 10 lists. And this is actually a screenshot from our digital edition. I'll talk about that in a second too. But our digital edition is the PDF version, basically, of our print magazine. And that's what one of our top 10 lists looks like. The top 10 lists are tied to our spotlights. We do a different spotlight feature every issue. And what we have done is chosen 10 of the top starred reviews in that genre or that nonfiction area. So that's another way. You can see right there, those are nice, brief, 1- and 2-line only annotations, but they give you enough information about something to either lead you further or give you just that right amount of succinct information that you'll know something about that book. Brain full of books right there. Now, I did say I was going to talk about our digital edition really briefly. So subscribers to Booklist get everything that Booklist has to offer. If you would like more information on subscribing, or if your library has a subscription and you'd like to know more about the online features that come with it, please head to booklistonline.com/subscribe. We recently launched our digital edition, which also has a free app. And if you're not currently a subscriber, you can still check out the digital edition. We have preview pages available, and you can learn more about the digital edition at booklistonline.com/issues. Now, looking at Novelist. Novelist is a wonderful place to get a wealth of reader's advisory information, especially ways to learn about books that you haven't yet read. So I'm showing you here on this screen some information on one of last year's hot books, The Girl on the Train. Now, let's say that you haven't had time to read it, or maybe you're not into psychological suspense and have not planned on reading it at all. However, all of your patrons have been asking about it. So how can you be comfortable talking about a book that you have not read? Something like this right here. Novelist features a full and fast annotation of the book, along with easy-to-follow links to a read-alike list and a book discussion guide. So you can use Novelist's handwritten recommendations to create reading maps, bookmarks, annotated lists, and so on. So for example here, The Girl on the Train, if you click that link there that says title read-alikes, there are 7 other titles recommended for it. Grab those titles and create a list in whatever format is preferred to have on hand at your library for patrons that are disappointed to see that it's still out. You can print that out really quick on a bookmark. You could have it on a shelf talker, etc. So Novelist kind of has done that reader's advisory work for you, and I just really think that spending some time just browsing through all of the different things that Novelist has to offer is really a great way to kind of learn about books that you don't know about. And again, what we've been talking about this whole session is looking for those appeal factors, looking for those keywords and things that should jump out at you that it helps you kind of use that review for a reader's advisory purpose. A little bit more about Novelist here. So Novelist is, they've got this great service that they just did a soft launch on last week. It's called the Novelist Book Squad. You can learn more about it at the URL that's there on your screen, and you can sign up for Book Squad emails at the bit.ly link there as well. I'll leave this up for a couple of seconds before I go on. Okay, so now moving right along, we actually have come to the end of our session. I built in some time for questions here. And I know it's a little difficult when it's not you're not talking to me in person, but if you have anything that you want to say in the question box there, we can kind of go back and forth and see if there's any questions that you've got on writing reviews or using reviews in Reader's Advisory.
Rebecca, I did see one question that came in. I don't know if you see it there. Are there any definitive lists of appeal terms or those buzzwords that you mentioned earlier?
They actually, yes, they can be found in a number of different places. Let me do a quick, if I'm still on screen share, I want to see if I can go out and do a quick search for you. First of all, if you, well, all right, Novelist has, here we go. Can you see the,
Yes.
is the web, okay, great.
Yes.
So Novelist, the URL is up there, and they have a whole guide on appeals. It's a downloadable PDF that you can save or you can print, but it's a whole guide, and I'm going to scroll down. I don't want to scroll too fast, make anybody dizzy. But I'm going to scroll down here, and they're just telling you right there, you know, this is the kind of stuff that we all know Joyce, and Joyce has sort of pioneered this for years, and Novelist works closely with her, as does Booklist, I'm proud to say. But they've created this kind of guide to appeal terms. So if you're looking for sort of a one-stop shop on looking for appeal and buzzwords, I would download that. Probably your best bet.
Okay. Is that available to you for free, or do you need to be a subscriber to Novelist?
It is actually. Nope, it's available for free. If you can, I don't know if you can tell here. What I have done is just gone right to ebscohost.com/novelist, and you can download that guide right. I'll show you what happens when you do it. You don't have to be logged into Novelist. It's going to open up. You've got to register for it. They want to know who you are asking for it. But what don't you have to register for these days? But that's all you have to do. You fill out the registration, and then you can download it and print it off and do that kind of stuff from there. So you don't have to be logged into Novelist at the time to do it.
That's great. Thank you.
Sure.
Another question that came through, this person works for a teen services department. Do the resources you mentioned today have reviews and lists and things for young adults and teens?
Yes, absolutely. Novelist actually has a whole, I don't know if I want to call it a separate side or not, but they've got Novelist K-8, and then the full Novelist also has high school and up. So Novelist definitely covers youth and young adult stuff, and Booklist Online, which I've just gone to here, Booklist Online has lots of youth content as well. And you can even, when you're doing things on Booklist Online, I'm going to just show you here in the quick search, you can separate it if you want to look at features or reviews for adult books, as well as features or reviews specifically about youth and young adult books.
Okay. And then another person asked if you could talk a little bit more about Book Squad.
Book Squad, yes. Hang on just a second. Let me go back there to Novelist Book Squad. So Novelist Book Squad, I really can only speak very briefly to because they just launched last week. If you are already a Novelist user and you were familiar with the Library Aware program, it is, I hope I don't misspeak here, it's either part of the Library Aware program or it is replacing, but I don't think it's replacing. I think it's just part of. So the Book Squad is going to be, it's basically Novelist's way of offering professional librarian-led guidance for different areas of Reader's Advisory. So they're going to do everything from RA advice, to various book lists on things, and everything that they were doing previously for Reader's Advisory training is just going to be amped up all the much more with Book Squad. They're just in the early stages of getting it started. So if you go back to, let's see here, get this up on my screen. If you go there to that bit.ly link there for Book Squad, it's going to take you to a registration page where you can sign up to get their emails once they've fully launched. So if you're interested in Book Squad in particular, I would say sign up for that, and you can get more information from them.
All right. Another question just came in. I don't know if you can see it there, but I'll read it out loud for the audience.
Great. Thank you very much.
If the library subscribes to Booklist and we have two different collection development librarians, can they both use the Booklist's website subscriber features?
Yes, absolutely. The login, give me just a second to go back. Oh, good, that was easy. I'll go back to Booklist Online. And let's see here. Right up there in the corner, you can see the username and password, etc. Now mine looks a little bit different because I am logged in here in my office, and it's got me on a continual IP address login. However, once you have your subscription copy in hand and you go to my profile, you just need to set this up here, looking at the mailing label that's got your subscriber information, and you just choose a username and a password that is tied to your print subscription. Now, anybody then that has that, so if you have someone in youth who does collection development and someone in adults, or if you wanted to have all three of your adult selectors or whatever the case may be, they can all use that same username and password.
That's great. Another person said she just signed up for Book Squad and is really excited, and thanked you for presenting. I've had a number of people ask, and I just want to confirm, will we be able to post your PowerPoint along with the recording?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I'll make sure that I shoot that over to you as soon as we close out here.
Okay, great. And yeah, that would be great, and we'll post that on the Rails website with the recording. I appreciate that. There was a lot of links in there, so that's what people are anxious to go back and check those out. So.
Right. Actually, and speaking of presentations and things, while I've got a couple minutes here, I wanted to tell you a little bit about our Corner Shelf newsletter, and it's tied in. Don't worry, I'm not going off on a tangent here. This is tied in because every time we do one of these sessions with Booklist and Rails and Novelist, it is featured in our Corner Shelf newsletter. And this is a newsletter that's sponsored by Baker and Taylor, that it's a free every other month-ish. I think maybe there's more than that. There's 8 issues a year. It comes out in your email inbox, and it is chock full of reader's advisory and collection development information. And so what we end up doing, you can see right here, there's my editor's note for the January one. We are talking about the Book Blogging 101 session that we did in December. So if you are interested in keeping up with the different things that Booklist is doing for reader's advisory and getting a notice of these live events that we do with Novelist and Rails, if you subscribe to the Corner Shelf newsletter, you will get notice of all those and links back to those archived sessions. So that's just my little pitch for that. I hope that's okay.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's providing access in multiple ways. So
yes,
here we go.
See, we're going to push these sessions out to you.
Yes. Another quick question about Booklist Online. Is the online version, is that an additional fee on top of the print subscription?
It is not, actually. Your print subscription includes all of the digital access, and that is getting everything on Booklist Online as well as our new digital edition. We just launched that, and you can see here, these are the issues that we have available digitally. And since I've got you here, let's take a peek into one of them. Let's look at the new one. So you can see there, it looks just like a PDF version of the actual magazine itself. So you'll see the page layout, the way that it's laid out in print. You'll see all the ads, etc. But yes, this comes free with your print subscription.
Okay. And if anyone needed to know their login information, who should they contact for that?
They can contact, hang on just a second. I know it, but I want to make sure that I'm telling you the right. There we go.
I'm anticipating, I'm just anticipating that might be the next question. So.
Indeed, indeed. Shoot an email over to info@booklistonline.com. Okay. And that's going to be one of our in-house customer service people for all things subscription. You won't be sent anywhere else. You're going to be talking to someone just down the hallway from me. So if you have any trouble accessing your subscription or you want to know a little bit more about what your subscription provides, go ahead and email us, info@booklistonline.com.
Okay. Well, I have not seen any other questions come in, so you must have been very thorough in your presentation, Rebecca.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. So thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to the next one.
Excellent. Thank you to everyone attending today.
All right. Okay. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. Thanks for attending today. Have a great day.